So you're dreaming about starting a flower farm, or maybe you've just completed your first season and then you realize that actually having a flower farm and growing flowers and selling flowers is actually really hard. And there's a lot to figure out and you're just not even sure where to begin or where you should go from here. I was once there too. I once did not know anything about farming. My name is Ruth Ann. I'm from Abundant Blooms Flower Farm in Dorr, Michigan. I just finished my 6th year of flower farming, which is crazy to me. I'm like full on planted and planning for my 7th year. And I sell almost exclusively to florists, but that's not how I started necessarily. But before that, I was a brand new flower farmer and just trying to learn what was worth investing into, my time and money and energy, and what infrastructure and where I was going to sell and how I was going to sell. And I spent way too many hours creating a website that really didn't get used for a long time. Today, I want to share with you my 7 best tips that I could think of at this moment for new flower farmers, or for someone that hasn't even started yet or just started and you're trying to figure out what to do. So these are some practical things that I wish I had known my first season that would have saved me a lot of time and money and frustration. So first of all, I did do a lot of research before starting a flower farm, and I had actually taken a little course on growing flowers. But one thing that's just been like a rock solid thing for me is that I was very slow and steady. There's a lot of reasons why I did this, and I don't think you can necessarily, never do something like jump in full force, both feet, and plant 5 acres, although that sounds like absolutely crazy. But in the season of life that I was in, I had 3 very small children when I started flower farming. I had, like, my son was 18 months old, and then I had a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. So I had babies, all little kids, no big kids. It just kind of naturally was that way, that I had to be very slow and steady. But I really am thankful for that constraint, because I think it's made me a better flower farmer, and I think it saved me a lot of time and money. I just really think slow and steady wins the race, and I think that's why I'm still here today, because I didn't burn out. I didn't go crazy and just get really, sink a lot of money in and not have a way to sell it, or just, get really overwhelmed and over my head. Not that I've never felt that way. So my first tip is slow and steady wins the race. You don't need to grow everything. Just pick 5 or 10 flowers to master your first year and become really good at that, and work on systems of their farm. Learn how to grow flowers, how to harvest flowers, get your feel for what you like, and how you might want to sell them. Give yourself room to make mistakes and to learn. Think of your first year as a foundational year. You're building systems and you're trying to figure out how this is going to serve you for years to come, because if you burn out and you're not there, it's not going to do anything for you except, be something that burned you out and you weren't able to do. So my first year was 2020. Didn't really know what to do. I had these 3 little kids. I went from being a nurse in the United States Air Force, working full-time, way more than full-time, having all these responsibilities, to very quickly having 3 small children, moving away. We lived in Texas. That was my last duty station, and we moved here to Michigan, where I'm from. And I kind of just didn't know what to do with myself. I just needed a creative outlet. I wanted to get outside and be with my kids. I wanted to be happy and, joyful. And I just was like completely overwhelmed with all things small children. So I decided to grow flowers, and then think like, oh, I could sell these. That would be cool. I didn't really know how to sell them. So this is what I did in my first year. And I really just took it as like a learning year. I just want to figure this out. I sold flowers through a vegetable farmer from my church at a farmer's market that he went to. So I didn't actually go to the market. I'm not actually necessarily suggesting this as a sales tactic. I don't think it really did a lot to help me market and get my name out there and help me get customers. But it did give me an opportunity to sell some flowers, and it just really gave me an opportunity to learn how to harvest twice a week, how to grow flowers, how to keep healthy flowers, how to succession plant. And it was very low risk. So I'll get into that a little later. But that's like my first year. And if you want to know, I sold $997 worth of flowers, and I worked like an absolute crazy amount of hours to do that. And essentially I like had no customers, and nobody even knew about me. But that's okay. It was a learning year. If I would go back and do it again, that's not exactly how I would do it, but that's what I did. And it allowed me to learn. So it was a learning year. I just got this high tunnel in August of 2024. And even there, it's like this whole new environment to grow in. And I just tried to take it really like, okay, this is a learning year. And I had some failures, which I actually did a video a little bit about some of that, and some challenges over in the spring. And I planted things at the wrong time, and I'm doing things differently now. So you're going to learn and you're going to grow, and just know that mistakes are part of it. So just understanding that, slow and steady. This goes along with tip number 2, which is learn before you commit to big sales. So if you're trying to put out a CSA your first year and you've got commitments that you have to fulfill these things, or you feel like you have to fulfill them, that's super stressful if you don't know how to grow flowers or harvest them or condition them or have a place to store them or all these things. And it just is really hard. I do think that having roadside stands and selling at farmers markets can be a really good way to start your flower farm, because it gives you a way to learn how to grow flowers, but then also gives you a way to do it without this, like, you have to commit to these sales. And if you don't, then you've got to reimburse people and go back, and it doesn't give you a good reputation. So that's really important. You want to have a good reputation. So you don't want to have to go back on your sales commitments, obviously. I sell now to florists almost, pretty much exclusively, which I have a download free tips for selling flowers to florists. So grab that in the description and you'll be added to my email list, which you're going to want to be on, because I'm going to have a Black Friday sale on my course. So don't miss that. So get subscribed to my email list. You don't want to go into a florist shop and have all these flowers that are beautiful, harvested properly, like having good quality flowers, and then you don't have flowers 3 weeks later. And then you have flowers. Then you're just telling this florist that you're inconsistent. And let me tell you what, flower farming is a really big fad right now. And there's going to be probably another flower farmer out there that's going to come in and know what she's doing, because she started steady, or he, and slow, and they figured it out, and they know how to sell flowers to florists. At least in my area, there's quite a bit of competition. Just give yourself a learning year. So we're back here now. You might hear our brand new goats that we just got bleating. Do goats bleat? Maaing? I don't know. They're over there. Here's my tip number 4. Build basic infrastructure, but don't go crazy. So there's going to be time to start small and decide what you really need as infrastructure. So there are things that you do need. You need land. You need, a place to plant flowers in full sun, and you need some way to water them. So you are going to need some kind of irrigation, whether that's hoses or sprinklers or drip tape, something like that. It doesn't have to be, positively crazily fancy. It just has to, work and be sustainable. You might need some landscape fabric. You might want to get a hoe if you don't have some kind of a hoe to weed with. That's one of the things I got. I really didn't have a good hoe, although I tried a couple cheap ones and I didn't like it, so I ended up getting a more expensive one. Maybe took me a year or 2 to figure that out. But you need some, some way to dig in the soil with a hoe. You're probably going to need buckets and snips and rubber bands and stuff like that. Things you don't need. You don't need super complex things like a cooler, a high tunnel, really expensive perennials, woodies, shrubs, bulbs, tubers. You don't need that. You're going to need a place to store your flowers in the shade. Assuming you have air conditioning in your house, that's a great place to start, or maybe your basement, something like that. But you don't need a cooler to start with. And as you grow, you'll figure out what's the real pain point and what do you need. We still don't own a tractor. I think about it a lot, but we don't actually own one. Okay, tip number 5, understanding pricing early. So understanding pricing early in your journey. What's tricky is you don't want this to be a race to the bottom. Sometimes it's hard when you're starting off as a new flower farmer and you don't understand pricing. You think, my flowers really aren't worth that much. I really can't charge $2 for this sunflower because I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know exactly what's going on. And maybe I'm not doing a good job. You just don't have a lot of confidence to sell them. Well, I highly recommend that you get some kind of a trusted source to know that you are growing high quality flowers, like you're not growing sunflowers with pollen. So you've done some kind of research, and then don't underprice yourself. I'm going to try to give you an example. I hope this will make sense. So let's say you're selling at a roadside stand, which would be considered selling retail, right? So often you think of retail being twice the price of a wholesale flower, or minimally 1.5 times what you would sell a flower for wholesale, right? With that in mind, if you're selling at a roadside stand and you can think this is a very general rule of thumb, and I'm pretty much talking about using this as a rule of thumb for annuals. If you're going to charge $1 a stem wholesale, or consider that your flowers are worth $1 a stem wholesale, again, being very general here, and you have a bouquet that you're selling that has 15 stems in them, which is very typical, or more, because you think they're not big enough or different things. Well, if you're selling that bouquet at your roadside stand for $10 and it has 15 stems in it that you would minimally charge $1 a stem for wholesale, like, do you see how you're really underpricing yourself? Like, you're only hurting yourself, because if you're not pricing in a sustainable way, you're going to hurt yourself, and you're not going to be able to be a sustainable farm, or you're not going to be attracting the right customers, because when you actually realize, oh wow, farming costs a lot of money and this isn't sustainable. In fact, I've lost money, and you're going to have to double your prices. Those customers that were with you for your cheap prices are just going to leave, and they're not really your customers that you're really looking for anyway. And I'll just let you know, there are roadside stands everywhere here in West Michigan. I mean, literally, there's one half a mile up the road that sells flowers. There's one 3/4 of a mile that way. There's one, I mean, they're literally everywhere. Like, I am not exaggerating. There are flower farms, little micro flower farms, having roadside stands all over. There are probably hundreds and hundreds of them here in West Michigan, in like this tiny little area. Sometimes I stop and look at their flowers and look at their bouquets. Sometimes they're beautiful flowers. Often they're beautiful flowers. They're selling them very cheaply, $10 maybe. And they're big, beautiful bouquets. They're not doing anything to help themselves. They're only hurting themselves and the people around them that are trying to actually do things profitably. And there's a farm even a few minutes from here that sells them for $20. And when I look at her bouquets and I count the stems and I count what I do charge wholesale for them, I am still selling my flowers to florists at a higher price point wholesale than people are selling them on roadside stands. I mean, they just are. And it's kind of a tragedy that people won't pay more, or they feel like they can't charge more. But even the woman selling them for $20 is selling them twice what I usually see them for, which is like $10. And it's just like a race to the bottom, and it's not helpful to anyone. Don't underprice yourself. Have an understanding of pricing. Know that your flowers are good and that they're worth pricing accordingly. The $10 bouquet is just never going to get you anywhere. My friend Alex from Cormdale Flower Farm, she talks about this a lot actually. She has a YouTube channel. She has a roadside stand. I don't have a roadside stand. And she's right. So go check her out. She's great. Tip number 6. Okay, we only got 2 left. We're doing good. We're almost there. Here's an important one. This one's really important. Learn from trusted sources. There is so much information out there. Literally, there is so much information out there. I'm almost 39. When I was 20, the world looked a lot different. Like, the information world really looked a lot different. In fact, YouTube didn't exist until I think it existed when I was 20, but like barely was born in its infancy. So there's great information. There's great that there's information out there, but there is so much information. There's so much chatter. It's so difficult to understand and to know what actually is right. So please, find trusted flower farmers, trusted flower growing resources. They are out there. I positively believe that. When I started, I really leaned into Lisa Mason Ziegler. I think she's really a phenomenal teacher for especially new flower farmers when you want to learn stuff about seed starting and germination and what to grow and how to grow it and how to start a business and things like that. She's really great. And then you go a little deeper with Dave Dallian, who also does courses through the Gardener's Workshop and stuff like that. The Dirt on Flowers has a great podcast from a different perspective. They didn't exist when I started flower farming, but I listen to them a lot now. And even though they're pretty much like at the same level as I am, I think maybe they started a year before me. I still learn a lot of stuff from them because maybe they're growing a crop I haven't grown or something like that. And I know they're going to give us, good information. So just understanding that. And then as my business shifted, now I sell flowers to florists, and I really invested heavily into woodies. You can check out all the videos I've done on those. I did several videos on woodies and what I've been growing. I invested into 1,000 woodies a year ago, and I did a ton of research. I contacted the large woody growers that are near me. They're in Canada, but that's all they do is grow woodies. And I found every resource that I could by them. This is Carl Vermeyer from Green Park Nurseries. He's done some interviews and things with the AFCFG is really how I learned about it, from being a member of the Association of Specialty Cut Flowers. Also a really great resource. So they're definitely out there. But don't join flower farming Facebook groups that have 40,000 people in it, and they're going to give you 40,000 different answers, and half of them are going to be just downright wrong, and the next 40% are going to be unhelpful, right? There's just so much noise. Just get yourself some trusted people that you can rely on. And if you're leaning into selling to florists, I have a free guide, tips for selling flowers to florists, like I mentioned, and I also have a course, a whole entire course about selling flowers to florists. I really created that course because I didn't see a lot of information about that, and that was my lane. And I felt like, wow, there really is not a roadmap out there. And so I created one to help, I hope, help the flower farming community. This isn't just like, oh, you should follow me and buy my course. Like that's probably not where most of you are at. So just, I really believe in finding good, trusted people and putting a little bit of money into either buying a book, or even a lot of Lisa Mason Ziegler's books you can get from the library before you even decide if it's a valuable and, you know, thing that you want to add to your own library. So stuff like that, I just think you got to have like some kind of a guiding light in the right direction. Okay, and then the last thing that I have on here is building relationships. So this is kind of like, I haven't really talked about selling yet, a little bit like selling to farmers markets or roadside stands and different things like that. Now you obviously have to know how to market and sell your flowers, or you're not going to be able to have a farm if you can't sell your flowers. So you might be able to grow the most beautiful flowers, but if you can't sell them, you're not going to be a profitable, sustainable farm. I think that one of the best ways for this is building visibility, building relationships, letting people know that you grow flowers. Like I still sometimes feel like I feel a little awkward. Like people are like, what do you do? And you're like, I grow flowers and I sell them to florists and, you know, things like that. So it takes a while to get your name out there. Getting a social media page going and telling people about your story, because people want to buy from you because of who you are. And that goes across the board. Whether you're selling at a roadside stand, relationships are important. Whether you're selling at a farmer's market, relationships are important. And let me tell you what, the relationships that I have with my florists are one of the most valued things in my entire business, because when you have a relationship with your customer, they're going to come back and buy from you, whether that's at a roadside stand or whether it's a florist or a wholesaler. I mean, from like a $20 bouquet to a $2,000 wedding order from a florist. Every relationship should be treated like gold. I just recently read something from Nikki Iving, I think, and she said that you should treat every customer like they're a guest in your home, right? Like you're laying out the red carpet, not in an insincere way, but just in a gracious, friendly. These things are important. These relationships are important. I actually talk a lot about this in my course. And when I got feedback from my students, a lot of them commented on the relationship aspect, because it is so, so, so important. The relationships are what is going to keep your farm growing and selling, no matter how you're selling. I really, really believe that. So it's about connecting with people, because we live in a world that's not very trustworthy. We live in a world of AI, and I mean, I even see these just like different things on the news, and I'm so skeptical of things now. I'm like, is that even real? Like, I've got to like fact check everything, I feel like, from the news to, I mean, everything, I feel like. So people are craving relationships and connections and real people. So be authentic, really value these relationships, because that is what's going to move your farm forward, give you a good reputation so you can grow your farm. So just to wrap up in this waning November evening, you don't have to have everything figured out. You do at some point just need to start and jump in and plant the seeds and grow, and then figure it out as you go. I definitely figured it out as I went. I definitely didn't start out my flower farming career thinking, I'm going to sell flowers to florists and I'm going to start a YouTube channel. It didn't start that way. So I hope that if you're a new flower farmer, that this is encouraging to you, or you're thinking about starting your flower farm. And if so, I highly recommend that you check out this video that I did about growing cosmos. They're a great beginner flower that I love growing on my flower farm.